Well, along the same lines, I'm curious what importance you would give to institutional support for those engaged in a field as controversial as the study of China. Do you think that universities, first of all, do they have a role in all of this in terms of sort of sticking up for their researchers and their professors? Is it a situation where, similarly to that, to that undergraduate student, the university as a whole is sort of wondering what the trade-off is in terms of access versus research, both for faculty but also for students?
Yes, is the short answer. I think institutions should play a role. And yes, if I may read into the second level of your question, that up until now, American universities and professional associations have not done enough in this regard. I think that there's too much fear of what the consequences would be. If you step back and look at the overall relationship between American universities and students in China, the overwhelming relation is that Chinese students, bright graduate students in the sciences usually, come to this country in great numbers and do well and are educated in our universities and often with funding supplied by American universities. The American universities as a group are giving a lot. And I'm not opposed to this. I think this is good. But giving a lot to Chinese students to come. And then when the other side of the question comes up, should this self-censorship that hurts not only the individuals on the blacklist, like me, and there are about a dozen American scholars on the lists that I'm on. It's not just the 12 of us. It really affects the whole China field in a deep way when everyone down to undergraduate students self-censor. That's a serious problem. And American universities ought to put that on the table and say, look, we're being fair to you. We're being more than fair to you. We're being generous to you. At a minimum, you have to cut out this blacklisting that's affecting our own academic world. Now, President Tillman, for example, has been quite articulate on the principles of academic freedom and human rights. I remember being moved listening to her graduation address to the graduating seniors. I think it was 2007, a year and a half ago, where she talked about human rights and academic freedom. And she quoted with approval a Holocaust survivor who said that the biggest mistake one can make is the mistake of silence. So at the theoretical level, she was right on. But when it comes to doing something about my blacklisting as a Princeton faculty, and Gil Rosman, my colleague in sociology, is on a blacklist, and there are others at Columbia and Dartmouth and Yale that are on blacklists, why this gets just silent treatment from Princeton and from the other universities involved is a mistake, I think, in my view. It truly is a mistake. I'm not the president of a university, but if I were, what I would do is go to the presidents of other universities and other leading administrators and get together and say, what can, as a group, we do to address the Chinese government or to address the American government and enlist their help in addressing the Chinese government to do something about this. I mean, after all, we're book people. I'm not a counter-revolutionary. I wouldn't know a gun or a knife if I could see one. This is really ideas. We're talking about freedom of expression. And I just think it's too bad when people don't raise the issue and don't try to do something about it.
Well, you mentioned ideas, and I'm really curious, in fact, how the combination of several of the things we've been talking about, in your opinion, plays into the conventional wisdom that exists out there vis-a-vis China, particularly in the foreign policy establishment. Do you think that because there's sort of this either the sort of de facto amount of self-censorship going on, that a particularly sort of conciliatory set of policies come out as a result because there's no one really feeling that they can openly criticize some of the things that are going on in China, but also in terms of the relationship between the U.S. and China?
I think there's no doubt about that. There's a group of China policy managers, is a good phrase for it. They are scholars from the political science field or State Department or think tank people whose main career is built around managing the U.S.-China relationship. And when they refer to China here, this group always means the Chinese government, indeed the top leadership of the Chinese government. The word China comes to mean what the government thinks, not what the vast Chinese population thinks. China is 1/5 of the world, after all, and there's an immense variety of thought and opinion and problems and so on. And it would be much healthier for our government and our whole nation and the world if foreign policy addressed the whole of China. And engagement is a favorite word of the China managers. Engaged, not just the top leaders, but the whole of China. But the China policy managers, ever since the Nixon breakthrough in the 70s, and then when Jimmy Carter established relations in the late 70s, has been a fairly set group that's got its own ideas, its own policies, and the ideology of that group is that it's a fragile relationship. You have to be careful about managing it. You have to be very, very sensitive to the feelings of the other side. But as I just said, the other side means the representatives of the government at the highest level. You can completely ignore the tribulations of the Chinese people. You know, a group like Falun Gong can be crushed, or underground churches can be crushed, and that doesn't matter so much as being very attentive to the feelings of the top leadership. So I do think it's an unhealthy situation. I really would hope that a broader, richer, deeper view of China and China scholarship could be involved in the making of U.S.-China policy.